This is Class 1 of a teleclass to develop your psychic ability to the next level, taught by Dean Ramsden.
So welcome everybody. This is a psychic development class, and we're going to look at how to either enhance your existing psychic development, or we're going to look at how to give you new tools to take your psychic development in a direction that works for you, that's something that you want to do. Now, I'm going to mostly lecture through these classes, and then at a certain point I'm going to lead you on an experiential exercise. And then at the end of the classes I usually take questions or comments that have been submitted by students from the previous class, and obviously we don't have that set up because this is our first class. But for the next class, feel free to send me via email your questions from the material from the first class, and also any comments you have or anything that you'd like to see expanded on or broadened in what we're going through. So we have 3 hours together, which is a lot of time, and I hope you enjoy the classes. So let's jump into the material. It's pretty much an act of courage to want to develop your psychic nature, because as I wrote about in my blog entry on my website, it basically puts you at odds with the scientific materialists. In some ways, science has become a new religion. Now, I'm not against science. I started my life as a scientist in the nuclear industry. I love what science has brought us in terms of the benefits of humanity. I love my Mac computer. I love digital music. So I'm not anti-science. But what I am against is the fundamentalism, the imprint that certain kinds of scientific thought bring to us as a species. In effect, it's become a new fundamentalist religion. It denies the soul because it can't be measured. It denies the psyche unless it can be configured in a laboratory. So for those of us who are very much concerned, very interested in the development of the human species from a spiritual standpoint, and especially from soul development, I'll define what I mean by soul in a few minutes. For those of us who are interested in spiritual development, there's a danger to scientific materialism, science that says if I can't measure it, it doesn't exist. Well, there are many things we can't measure that definitely do exist. So at its core, the scientific approach to soul development, I think, has to be watched very, very carefully. Also, the moment you start talking about soul development or spiritual life in modern day society, I've noticed an increasing trend towards making fun of spiritual or psychic work, and it kind of cuts at the heart of thousands of years of the wisdom traditions of our planet, different cultures, developing our connection to the spiritual world, developing our connection to our soul growth. We'll be talking a little bit in terms of science in a few minutes, in terms of brain development. But if you talk to many scientists, they will say, okay, even though we believe in the functioning of the brain, we can't find the self, the human self that the brain is wired to run. And we're not even sure the self really exists because we can't find it. So the search for psychic development is really the search for meaning. It's the search for the meaning of who you are. It's the search for the meaning of other people, of your relationships. It's a search for how you can get your needs met. And ultimately, from my point of view, psychic development is based around finding that meaning, finding the meaning of the self, finding the meaning of the world. But ultimately, it's based around leading us towards greater integration and greater self-expression. So when we develop ourselves psychically, we are increasing our integration, where we are improving our self-expression. And for those of us who are interested in energy healing, we're also increasing our perception and our abilities as energy healers. Since the psychic development is the meat and potatoes of energy healing, they both go together. So in this class we're not talking about energy healing, but if you are a healer, developing yourself psychically, expanding and connecting yourself to your soul personalities, which we'll talk about shortly, is going to enhance your abilities. Additionally, when we develop ourselves psychically, we're connecting ourselves more clearly with the spirit world. We're able to begin to have or continue to have relationships with non-physical spiritual beings. And if that's not part of your worldview, that's really fine. It might be that you're connected to a religious or a spiritual path that has those spirit beings already implied in it. For instance, angels in the Christian faith are considered part of the metaphysic of Christianity. If you're a Buddhist, there are various Buddhist deities that also could be considered as spirit guides or spirit allies, and so on and so forth. If you follow a Native American tradition, various spirit allies also will be part of that tradition. To develop yourself psychically is also to develop yourself spiritually, in that you can begin to find and relate to non-physical, sentient beings that affect us, whether we believe in them or not, or who you may actually want to deliberately make a connection to. If you are, let's say, a psychic healer who's working, or an energy healer who's working with a spirit guide, if you develop yourself psychically, you will be enhancing the connection between yourself and that guide. And as you work with clients, you're enhancing your connection with your client's guides, your client's spiritual support. The client's guides will be able to connect more deeply to you because you have more development in your system. But I do want to issue one warning about this work. That is that it will change you. Success in psychic development will change you, sometimes fundamentally. And when we get into the brain development part of this class and also into soul growth in the next class, you'll see why. Because the moment you start to expand yourself as a psychic being, as a multidimensional energy being, more influences come into your life, and with those influences come the potential for change. So this I've seen in all the years I've taught, and also during my own personal growth. I've seen that the moment you get into this material, your life will change. And it's not necessarily a deep change coming from you, because your energy field shifts and adapts and changes, becomes more charged, becomes more integrated, more sophisticated, more highly developed, let's say. It actually starts to act as an attractor for new things into your life. Things will be drawn into your life that would not necessarily have been drawn into your life previously. So a mundane example is you walk into a bookstore and a certain book gets your attention, and you don't know why, but intuitively you pull that book off the bookshelf, take it home, and it changes your life. It sends you on a journey, or it sends your curiosity off in a direction that shifts you radically. And probably many people, if not all people in this class, have had that experience of being affected by an apparent spontaneous event or a piece of information or a chance meeting with an interesting person that sent you off on a direction that has changed your life. For those of you who work with clients, this will also be applied to your clients, in that when you do deep work with them and enhance their spiritual development, their psychic abilities, their lives will start changing. And we have to be somewhat prepared for that, and also put it in context. If somebody has a really big shift, someone we're working with has a huge shift in their psychic development, suddenly they hate their relationship, or they want to take a backpack and head off to Europe. That may be what they need to do, but we also need to put that into a perspective and make sure they have enough psychological counseling or therapeutic assistance to say, hey, wait a minute, I know you've just had a big shift because we've been doing energy healing work or meditation work together, but let's be cautious. Let's be cautious about making a big shift until you've really examined it. And when we get into the brain balancing part of our work today, you'll see why. The intuitive part of the brain can often want to make decisions or take actions that the more rational part of the brain says, hold on a minute, let's slow down here. Now that I've warned you about all the changes that are going to happen, enter at your own risk kind of thing, let's just go over the map of our work over the next 3 classes. Now that the map of psychic development that I'm using is actually the map of how to connect with not just the psychic development or the spiritual development of this incarnation, this lifetime, but also how to connect to I guess you would call it your soul wisdom. The wisdom, the information, the development that you have carried with you across many incarnations over many thousands of years. And we're going to define those two aspects of you differently. And I'm actually following the work of a Greek Cypriot healer that I studied with many years ago, who has since passed away. His name was Stylianos Ateshlis, sometimes known as Daskos. And he had, I thought, a very useful distinction of defining what soul growth was. And he defined our current personality, the personality of this body, this lifetime, as a temporary soul personality. So your temporary soul personality of this lifetime is who you are, or who you believe yourself to be in this lifetime. It's governed obviously by your personality traits, by your upbringing, by the culture in which you were raised, your education, your friends, influences on you by your mother, from your father, and so on. And your temporary soul personality is deeply connected with your nervous system and how you've learned to use your brain, use the two hemispheres of your brain in this lifetime. The second part of who you are as a soul, the second part of your development, is your permanent personality. Daskos called it the permanent personality. And this is the wisdom, the character, and I think he was right. I mean, I love that he called it the personality of your soul, that there is a part of you has developed across many, many lifetimes that has an agenda for your growth, your soul growth. And we could call it your soul, we could call it your soul essence, we could call it perhaps even your higher self. But it contains in it the essence of multiple lifetimes, and not necessarily just on this planet. It can be other planets. There are many people who I've worked with who have memories of being on other planets, on other life experiences, but for the most part it's going to be human-based, human sentient based, because that's what we're working on here as souls. So in our second class especially, we'll go more into what that actually implies, what a permanent soul personality implies, and more importantly, we want to look at how to tap into the higher parts of who we are, how to tap into, whether you call it your higher self, your soul wisdom. It may sound like an airy-fairy thing, a kind of new agey thing, but I've actually found it to be a very practical healing skill that we can apply, a very practical psychic development skill that we can implement, because there is actually wiring in the human auric system. There's actually wiring that supports the connections of your higher self, of your permanent personality, into your current day personality. And when we, as healers, or if we do very highly developed meditations, we can actually draw down, connect into that energy stream, that personality. And that can also change your life, because then you get a greater sense of who you are, what your life task is, what you came here to do, how you want to spend your life energy, your life force. So we're going to focus on that in the second class. And in the third class of our series, psychic development series, we're going to look at some of the problems that we know occur in spiritual and psychic development, the shock to the system, especially shock to the amygdala, the flight-fight response system of the human brain, what happens when that is heavily traumatized or damaged. We're going to look at damage to the third eye, Agnya or Ajna, some people pronounce it. We're going to look at what happens when third eye development is compromised, or when the third eye is damaged in some way. Because if you did suffer a shock or trauma to those parts of your brain, and the energetic brain too, that's basically what the upper chakras are, it's the energetic aspect of your nervous system. If you suffer some kind of shock or astral invasion, and there are numerous things we can look at, then that will negatively affect your psychic development, it will negatively affect your spiritual development, it will inhibit you from going from one stage to the next. Our third class will look at what that actually implies and how to begin the healing process so that you can, either you or if you're working with a client, reboot the system. You know, it's equivalent basically to taking out the computer virus or taking out the computer bug in the software, scrubbing the system, and then rebooting it and starting your computer again, starting your development again, and get done what you need to be done. Also, a part of our work in psychic development is to work with a psychic energy center, a chakra that is not that well known in the West. It is called the Guru chakra. And the Guru in question is not another person, but the Guru in question is you, your own inner teacher, your own connection to that wise part of your permanent personality that informs your life. And you may have heard stories of when you die or when someone dies, they rush up towards the white light and through the tunnel. And part of the dying process is to have a life review, to sit with this, with a wise person and kind of look at your life, and you get to see, according to all these reports, you get to see how each thing in your life, each event in your life, each person you met, each choice you made, was actually perfect in some way, in that it led to growth, it led to you choosing a certain direction in your life. And as part of your life review, you get to see in this moment how everything came together. There may very well be a higher being involved in that process, but what is definitely involved in that process is the Guru chakra, is that part of your soul that is tracking everything you're doing, is supporting and guiding you to be in touch with and to be wired more directly into that wise part of your soul. Brings many benefits. And I've seen these benefits when I've worked with people to enhance the connection to the Guru chakra. And in my research into healing work, I've seen this as, it's not actually the thing you start out with when you work with a client, because there's problems with that. It's the work you do when someone's an intermediate to a quote-unquote advanced person, someone who's done a lot of work on themselves. They've cleared a lot of the trauma from their past. They've looked at a lot of issues, personal issues, and come to closure with those issues. They've shifted out of the lessons they came here to learn, and they're moving towards a new perspective on their life. They're moving towards a serious reboot of their lives. When that happens, connecting them up with the Guru chakra, connecting them up with the higher parts of who they are, can be powerful work, because they're no longer just rehashing the past. They are actively participating in their soul's evolution. And that's ultimately, I think, the goal of psychic development work, is to leave behind the repeating patterns of the past, to leave behind the personal work we all of us need to do in this lifetime, and begin to move into new territory for ourselves, make new choices, expand ourselves, expand our horizons, and create, literally create our lives, rather than have our lives be a repeat of our family members' lives, the imprint from the family heritage. Rather than repeating someone else's life or living someone else's life, we actually get to create our own. That's the permanent personality, the Guru chakra's job, is to take us in that direction. So let's just look at brain development. Okay. The temporary personality, your current day personality, and your psychic development is heavily dependent upon your brain development or your brain usage. And as we all know, the brain is not a single unit. It's actually comprising of two hemispheres, the left brain and the right brain. And as we all know, that the left brain hemisphere is the rational, detail-orientated, language-based part of our nervous system. And the right brain hemisphere is feeling-based. It looks at the big picture. It's symbolic. It's image-based rather than language-based. And there's a series of cables, nerve endings that connect the two hemispheres together, called the corpus callosum. What we found by brain research, and especially in brain damage, is that we literally do have two personalities living inside us. The reality of us being one person is actually not quite the way it is. There is this very rational, language-based part of you that thinks in terms of I, thinks in terms of being a separate human being. And it's also that the part of you that runs the inner dialogue. When you think in words in your head, that is your left brain that's functioning. Now when you fall asleep at night, or you daydream, or you do meditation that evokes images, you move more into your right brain. You move more into your right brain hemisphere that does not think in words, thinks in symbols, does not think in terms of details, thinks in terms of the big picture. And for us as psychics, or for us as people developing our psychic nature, we need to be able to discern where the energy is going. Is it going more into the rational self, or is it going more into the feeling-based? And this can be a major problem with psychics or intuitives, because for many psychics the assumption is that if they're in their right brain, if they move out of the rational into the intuitive, into the feeling-based, that the feeling-based is actually always going to tell them the truth, is actually always going to give them an accurate perception of reality. So that for many psychics, and many the studies I've done over the years,